So in the last video you saw me remove the old bearings from the gearbox, and what we're going to do this time is we're going to clean up the gearbox and then we're going to fit new bearings into it. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to clean up this whole gearbox, which is pretty filthy. I mean, this will have been on the bike since it was made in 2007, so it's due a cleanup. I've very lightly gone round the rim with a Stanley blade just to take off all that nasty gasket sealant, make sure that's off. I've just removed the brake shoes just to make it easier to get into everything, but we'll clean those up as well. We've got some Halfords brake cleaner, so we're just going to go around now with a trusty toothbrush and get this all sprayed and hopefully looking like new, or as near as we can. Okay, so we're just getting as much of this cleaned up as we can. It's not going to be gleaming like new, but clean as it can be. Using a trusty toothbrush to get in amongst the hard to get areas. And we'll give it a clean off and see how it's going to come up now. Okay, so nice and clean inside now. What we're going to now try and do is fit the new bearing in. Now, the only slight issue I've got is if the freezing of the bearing and the warming of the case doesn't allow the bearing just to drop in, you have to apply some pressure, you have to tap it in. Now, in order to tap in a bearing, you have to tap it in on the outer ring only. And how you would do that, well, in the case of the small one, it's quite easy. You could either use the old bearing, which this is, or just put a socket that is the right size on top of the bearing and tap that in. That's fine. Now, the bigger bearing, I don't have a socket handy at the moment that's going to be big enough to go around the where is it, the circumference of that bearing. This is the old one. So there's two options. I'll have a look at work, see if I can find a socket there that maybe fits it, or failing that, just get a bearing driving kit which gives you a lot of different sizes that will fit in, and you just basically tap the bearing in. Obviously that'll delay putting this in a day or two till I get that. Bearing driving kits are about £12–13 on eBay, not dear at all, so we could always get one of them. So anyway, at the moment what we'll do is we'll heat up this area here, and then we'll take the new bearing out the freezer and see if we can fit this one in anyway. Okay, so that's what we're going to do next. So we're just heating this up just now. Just expand this a little bit, that's metal. Don't want to go mad, but okay, set fire to the house. One very cold bearing out the freezer rather. Drop that in. Tap this in. There's blood all over it. Try not to smack your hand with the hammer. It's not too bad. Okay, that's in. One new bearing in. I think because we're having to tap it, we are going to leave the bigger one till I get either a bigger socket or a proper bearing driver. So we'll be back when we've got either of those. So in the end, I decided just to delay the work by a few days and get the proper tool, a bearing driver. It seemed to make sense. This is from eBay. This cost about £13 delivered, and what you get is a complete set of different, if I can get them out of the box, drivers for pushing the bearing in. Lots of different sizes, different poles obviously to attach them to, and you just tap them in, tap the bearing in with a hammer. So for £13 I thought, well, there's no point mucking around, let's get the proper thing. So what we can do now is continue with the work that we started a few days ago. I'm going to make sure the first bearing I put in that you saw in the video is in correctly, just make sure it's seated properly, and then we're going to do the larger bearing, which is the one I couldn't do without the proper tool, and we'll take it from there. So we're on to the next stage now. Okay, so here we are back again at the most impractical garage you've ever seen in your life, but we're going to carry on. And first thing I want to do is take one of the new bearing drivers and just tap in that smaller bearing a little more, because I think that probably should be sitting a little flusher. So we're going to tap that in first, and then we'll move on to the bigger one, which is currently in the freezer overnight freezing. We'll heat this up a bit, and then we'll see how we go driving that in. That's going to go right down to the bottom there. So let's adjust this a bit. I must get a longer sort of support for this. Okay, so this just sits on top of the bearing here. I made this little, that's going to hold into there. That looks okay to me. I don't think that's going to go any further down than that. So hopefully that's that in place. Can we angle it, there we go. Just about to see it there. So now we move on to the more difficult one, which is the bigger one. So we're going to heat this up, and then we'll get the bearing out the freezer rather, and we'll try and drive it in. Okay, so we're just going to start heating this up. See if we can create a little bit extra room. the bearing out the bag it's been in all night, and without taking the skin off my fingers, I'm just going to sit that. Oh, and through it drops. Hey, hey! Now there's a result. I wasn't expecting that. So the bearing has dropped right into the case where it should be. It looks like the heating and the cooling's worked a treat there. I'll just let that cool a minute and we'll check and make sure it's flush at the back. So there you go. Cool your bearing, heat the fitting area, and that one dropped right in. Excellent. Well, that was easy. Okay, so you can see the bearing is sitting snug where it should be. So is the other one. If you turn this over, you can see it's flush with the stop there, which is where we want it. So all we really now have to do with this is put the new oil seal round here when this is cooled down, and that's the gearbox finished. Apart from a bit of oil and stuff. Now the other thing we've got to do is take the clutch gear out of the old swing arm, because this swing arm is going in the bin. Now this is in very tight, but what I did was just again heated round here and then took a rubber mallet. I don't recommend you use a hammer, so one rubber mallet, and all you're basically doing is tapping the end of that, and pretty easily out came the gear. So that's that. Now the next thing we've got to do is get the bearing here off the gear shaft. Now I might try tapping that down with a mallet, see if we can get it off. You can get a gear puller, a bearing puller, now a gear puller rather. Now I actually bought one of them, but it's going to be too short because somehow or other I measured it wrong, to work on this length of gear. So I might have to either get another one or see if we can get this off. But I'm going to coat this with WD-40 and just see if we can tap this off. If we can't, then I'm not going to force it. We'll leave it and we'll get another gear puller. They're only £7 or £8. I know it's not a dear thing. So that's the next stage, is get this bearing off here. Right, well I tried a bit of WD-40 on this, and I tried a tapping with a mallet, but this isn't going to move. So I'm going to have to get a different gear puller for this. So we're going to come back to this. I don't really need to do this until we get the new swing arm anyway, which hopefully will in the next week or so. So we're going to come back to that. So anyway, to finish off the gearbox, all we need to do now is fit the oil seal into here, and this goes flat side down. Just watch this little spring. I don't know if you can see it, the tiny little spring just round the collar there. That can ping out at you. And this has to go in so it sits level, flush with the. In fact, you can just about push it in by hand. And I'm just going to get one of my bearing tappers to push it and just push it in until it's level with the metal surround. So we're going to tap that in, and then pretty much that'll be job done. Okay, that's it in. You can actually almost push it in by hand. Just tapped it a little bit to make sure it's nice and snug. So that is basically the gearbox section finished. So all we need to do now is get this off here, replace this bearing, and then we just need to wait for the new swing arm to arrive and the new main back wheel bearing, and we can start reassembling. So we're getting there. Thanks as always for watching. Hope you've enjoyed it and found something interesting. There'll be another one coming up very soon as we continue. So as always, if you could like and subscribe, that'd be great. And ride safe, and much appreciate your interest. Thanks guys.